Every life tells a story. Join Frank Julian as he shares his one chapter at a time from Story of a Soul 2, releasing every Wednesday.
The Story of a Soul 2 by Frank Julian with Sean O'Neill, narrated by Frank Julian. Chapter 2, A Grandmother's Influence. The single greatest influence in my early life was my maternal grandmother. As much as I love my parents and family, she had the deepest influence on me at that time in my life. I have come to believe that God ordained it. My grandmother moved in with us when I was not yet 4, after my grandfather died. His name was Frank, like mine, and she plainly told me that I'd be her escort when we went to family functions. I took it very seriously, and in the movies of my cousins' weddings that took place a couple of months later, I was right at her side. The bond between us grew as time went on. My grandmother was a strong Italian Catholic woman who had wanted to become a nun, but her mother died in childbirth when she was 12. She had to raise her younger siblings. She continued to grow strong in her faith, even though she would eventually marry, have 7 children, and immigrate to America from Sicily. She was proud of her heritage and of being born in Palermo. As a young woman, her entire world was shaken when her 18-month-old baby died of pneumonia in 1929. She wanted to go back to Italy because her heart was so badly broken. It didn't break her faith, though. Her only hope was Jesus. When my parents would go out dancing on Saturday night, I'd sit and talk with Grandma after we watched Gunsmoke. She always liked Miss Kitty. I remember how we talked about Italy, and she'd tell me stories of her faith and the lives of the saints. She was born in 1890, and without my consciously knowing it, her Victorian ideals took root in me. It broke her heart that she didn't have a church wedding. She was engaged for 5 years. All they could do throughout their courtship was to look at each other. At times, she'd sit on the balcony, and they could see each other. Her father didn't want her to marry because she was keeping the house, so she had to elope and later had the union blessed. Her brother had gotten into the wrong crowd, and she would eventually rescue him. After her father had beaten him and driven him from the house, from a backyard shed filled with rats. That was enough to scare me straight throughout my entire early life. Her bedroom was like a chapel. There were religious pictures on the wall. She honored their memories, especially Jesus' mother Mary and St. Rita. St. Rita was from Sicily and had suffered with one of the thorns from Jesus' crown of thorns. I remember the picture and the story. The heroic lives of the saints inspired me at a young age, and I would pray to the Lord and say, I want to be a saint. She also had a statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. She kept a perpetual lamp and flowers in front of it. She didn't worship the statue, but it was her point of contact with God. The story of the statue is related to the death of her baby, Carmela, in 1929. My Aunt Frances told me how upset my grandmother was because of the child's death. A house-to-house salesman came to the door selling statues. According to my aunt, my grandmother pushed away all the statues except the one of the Sacred Heart. That was the one she wanted. She loved Jesus, and she had that statue with her for the rest of her life. When they returned to America in 1932, because of Mussolini and the threat of war, the boat hit violent rough waves. They feared transatlantic travel because of the sinking of the Titanic 2 decades earlier. She had all her children kneel, and she took out the statue, and they said the rosary. They arrived safely in New York. They were very poor and settled in Harlem. After they improved their finances and eventually moved to the Bronx, the statue of Jesus went with them. When the whole family moved to Detroit because their oldest daughter married a man with a job in Detroit, the statue went with her. My grandfather died, and she moved in with us. I always felt Jesus' presence in her room. As a little boy, I'd steal the neighbors' flowers to put them in front of the statue. And when my Aunt Jean, who had kept the statue after my grandmother's death, passed away, my cousin brought it to me. He felt I should have it. I don't worship statues, but I am deeply honored to have it. So many memories flood back to me whenever I think of my grandmother. I remember the 4-year-old boy I was, walking with her on Wednesday afternoons to say the rosary with the old ladies. I remember her taking me to Mass every first Friday to honor Jesus and his Sacred Heart. I remember how she was a woman of prayer and how she said her rosary every afternoon at 3:30 p.m. between General Hospital and Secret Storm. I remember the priest coming to bring her communion and her watching the Mass for shut-ins. I remember my Aunt Mary Ann picking her up for novenas, even though she had severe rheumatoid arthritis. She was always faithful and diligently adhered to her faith. She mentored me by example. She prayed when we went in the car to travel, and respect was the primary virtue that she espoused. She taught me respect and love for others. She taught me hospitality, and when she grew sicker, she instructed me in love and caring for the elderly. The doctor and visiting nurse would come to see her when she was sick. She had oxygen and a hospital bed long before hospice care was a common practice. She would cough and gag in the night. I slept upstairs and I would hear it all. Sometimes I'd be afraid that she might die during the night, but she didn't. She died in the hospital. Words can never express how much she impacted me and how she lives through me even to this day. I believe that I received her mantle for the family. I think that it's crazy sometimes, my level of still being so thoroughly Italian, and in particular being Sicilian, in so many ways. I often reflect on all of the family funerals that I have performed since attending the funeral service for my grandmother. I've also been called to many family members' deathbeds for prayer. I would later become a registered nurse and a pastor, I believe because of her. I am humbled by her life, her example, and I am grateful.
Thank you for listening. Join Frank Julian every Wednesday for a new chapter of Story of a Soul 2. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.